Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention?
I am that dude, Bodkins. Patty to patty. It's ridiculous. No way. There's nobody else out there. He's your guy. Give a big round of applause for the one and only BodkinShow. I'm going to repeat that again, folks. I didn't stutter. Welcome to the Bodkins Show.
Good evening, everybody. I am that dude, Bodkins, and welcome to another episode of the Bodkins Show. Wow. I mean, I missed you guys last week. To get you guys caught up, I obviously was gone last week. I was out on vacation. Got the Rona on vacation. Battled back all week. We did our weekly wrap-up show on Wednesday. I was under the weather, still a little bit thin, but been fighting it. Feel back to my normal self. This weekend's been a busy weekend here on the Bodkins channel. Remember, folks, if you missed it, check out our yesterday's show. I have Head Kicks and Haymakers, our UFC 278 preview show. And then we did the UFC 278 post show this morning. If you missed any of that, please do check it out. It was a lot of fun. Kitty and Craig obviously always join me for that. It was a lot of fun. We talked about how Rocky Edwards shocked the world last night, folks. Literally shocked the world. We get into all that on Head Kicks and Haymakers this morning. So if you missed it, please do check it out. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, and you're sharing. Tonight we have a special guest. Tonight's guest, a dear friend of mine, a guy who I could probably legitimately tell you that there probably wouldn't be a Bodkin show, though, at least in this format, without him. He's helped me come a long way, helped me build up a lot of this program. You've seen me on his program almost on a weekly basis for the last month or so. Give a big warm of applause for my main man, my good friend, founder of the Let's Talk Sports Network. You can see his logo in the corner every episode. We'll always be working with this guy, my good friend, Dan Harris. Thank you, Dan, for joining me this evening. I know it's real late over there across the pond, as the kids like to say, and I can't thank you enough for staying up and doing this with me.
No, Nick, I wouldn't miss it for the world. Honoured to be on, and have you on my network for that matter.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, Dan, it's an honor. I mean, roles are reversed here. You're usually asking me the questions while I'm sitting in the hot seat, but tonight I'm putting you in the hot seat, my friend. I'm excited about this conversation we're about to have. We already got Tanner, obviously, chiming in saying Dan. I thought it said damn at first, but it says Dan. Dan, let's go ahead and get started into it. Have you always been a sports guy, or like what led your passion into sports?
Really, as you know, with my disabilities, I always wanted to be able to do sports, as is the case with many people, even if it's just through lack of athleticism. You always, if you can't play it, the next best thing is watch it. So that's really the biggest thing. Any sport, what's on TV, I'll watch. As you can tell by the network, which has so many sports covered, it's just a case of I'll talk sports with anyone and have a good conversation about it.
So let's talk a little bit about that. You mentioned a lot of times, and we've always talked to you about your disabilities. Like I've always kind of wondered what that is, and like how long have you been dealing with that? Has that been something since like a birth kid, or is that something that happened over time?
Well, a little bit of both, to be honest with you, sir. I was born 3 months premature, so I'm lucky, essentially, to be here. So the downside is, just because I was so premature, there was a few issues. I was born with cerebral palsy, which, for anyone that don't know what that is, the basic way I can describe it is it's a bit like having a stroke. In my case, I've got left side paralysis. The biggest issues for me is the strength in my hands or my legs, which creates other issues. And the reason why and you do see odd comment from time to time about my speech, it affects your speech, and that's really the basic thing. Your muscles in your mouth, in my case, but there's a lot of cerebral palsy people that can't even speak. So, whereas some people like maybe feel sympathy for me, I actually think I'm quite lucky because a lot of people have it a lot worse than I do.
So, I mean, Dan, to me, you're just an inspiration. That's what I think. I mean, you're a guy who you've kind of nailed it, and you've built this network pretty much off, your own back here. What kind of inspired you to do that? The Let's Talk Sports Network. I mean, is it just for the outside? You kind of said to reach that outside world. I mean, talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, as podcasting got a bit more, prevalent, I always had interest or ambition to do that, but I am quite low in confidence. I never really took that push to do that. And then I live vicariously through sports. That's my connection with the outside world, not just to fill up the day. It is that little piece of the world what I can't reach because I'm essentially in the house 100% of the time. But when the pandemic happened, there was no sports, so that sort of pushed me in a way. It was very rudimentary when I first set up, literally just quick 2-minute sports update. Should there be a signing in what you call soccer, I would do a recording off my phone. It was very basic, and I learnt it as I go. I didn't imagine having people on the channel with me or it being any sort of network, and it was the problem with being housebound, you've got no contact. So when you're setting up a channel, who you can have come on to talk sports with you? So it was a little bit of a struggle, but the route I went down is literally just get in contact with people, explain your circumstance, and say, "Would you like to come on and talk sports?" You get obviously a lot of no's, but some people like your story and come on. And the one plus point from that is there's certain people what encourage me. Someone like Keith, who I do my New York sports show with. He showed me what I wanted Let's Talk Sports to be. He had a very professional setup. He knows his stuff. But the biggest thing was he didn't treat me as if, who's this guy? We just had a nice chat, much like when we started talking. But not only that, he said to the network what he was on, this guy knows his sport. He's from the UK, but he could tell you anyone on any roster. I think you should speak to him. And that gave me a bit of confidence that Keith had that much faith in me off just one conversation.
So, I mean, Dan, like I heard you kind of say it was younger, like you didn't have that, not motivation, but you were just kind of, I guess, shy. Like, was that shy, like hard to reach out to people, like, especially when you're first starting out? Because I think obviously, couple months ago when you found me or I found you, vice versa, I don't know who found who. Fate is what found us, and I credit a lot to you as well. So I kind of I think maybe I see myself in your situation as far as, that's kind of who I want to be like as you, and you're seeing yourself in this guy that you're talking about. But was that hard to reach out to people initially? I mean, when you're first starting out and asking people, and how hard was that to get out of your shell there?
Quite hard, obviously. In some ways, your circumstances push you because you want to do the show, so you need someone to come on. I'm not someone what can carry a show on my own. I'm very aware of, for example, the reason why our show works is because you can do things I can't. You've got the charismatic aspect, and I haven't got that. My strength is I think people like to work with me. I'm quite easygoing, and I think when you can't do a show like myself, you need someone what can do things what you can't, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, you're exactly right. Like somebody's got to be the yin to the yang. If you have two energetic people, it's probably too much chaos at the same time, and you need somebody that's a little bit more laid back. Is that kind of what you're picking up? What I'm picking up? What you're throwing down there?
Yeah, that's basically it. I know for my show to work, I need someone, especially as I don't appear on camera through my situation. I need someone to essentially be the energy, and whereas I can provide, I like to think I can talk sports with anyone, so that's what I can provide, and a bit of organisation as well. And you always need. It's different for different people. Like, for instance, me and Brian, obviously you've had on the show, with similar aspects in we're a bit calmer, but our show works. Whereas for our show, obviously you will tell the jokes, find the energy, and that's what you need. It depends what you want from each show, but I definitely look for people what. First, I look for good people because you can find people that know sports all the time. But I look for good people, and then I look for people that can provide stuff that I can't.
So, Dan, have you ever had like anybody like try to come on your show and say, "Hey, like I need to see you," or like I don't believe what you're kind of saying here, just because like to me, like my first like time I think we met, I told my wife, I said, I don't know, I didn't see the guy's face, and like I was like, he's never asked anything from me, never wanted anything from me other than just to show up. Has anybody ever like said anything like that to? Because I mean, there's people obviously, the Manti Te'o story is just coming out back on Netflix, but there's these catfish or people out there. Have you ever had anybody just kind of come out and say like, oh, this guy could be trying to catfish? Are you trying to catfish me or anything like that?
I have heard people saying they're not sure about doing the show. You don't appear on camera, and I've said to them, look, in the past when I've had photos posted, due to my deformed state, I've got like my neck essentially is dropped into my body. I won't appear on camera. If that's not your thing, then that's fine. I essentially will shake hands and not come on, but I'm not appearing on camera. So if that's not your thing, then no hard feelings. We'll move on. And one thing about me is if I make my mind up, I'm quite stubborn. I know I come across as quite casual, but to maybe get over some of my difficulties, you need a certain stubbornness, if you will.
Yeah, I think everybody's a little I'm a little stubborn when it comes to things too. I mean, so I think everybody can kind of get behind that. We got some comments just kind of rolling in here. Tanner's saying, just talk sports if you need me to get excited. Exactly. Kenny Miller, who's obviously on my show all the time, DDH and LTS making big things happen for the little guys. We appreciate you 100%. And Paul Hope, what's up, guys? Paul, how's it going? Paul's up late burning the midnight oil with you. Dan's a great guy and a great friend. I think we can all say that, Paul. Dan, you are a one of a kind, a true inspiration. I've told you that before. I'll continue to bat the drum. I'll continue to go to bat for you, my friend, no matter what. Earlier, you kind of mentioned you started with the soccer. Was that soccer the first, your first love, like first as a sport wise? I know you said you didn't really play anything as a kid, but like sports was just kind of always there, and that was your way to connect with people. Was soccer that first love for you, or was it something else?
Yeah, it definitely was. Obviously, that's the biggest sport over here in the UK. It's the most accessible, so that was the thing what attracted me to sports the most. But American sports is being a bit more later on, but Yeah, if you lived in England, if you're into sports, probably 90% of the fan is into Premier League, what you call soccer. So that was definitely my first love, really, basically.
Is that still that way? I know you're a big Jets guy, so is like football. Is that now taking the number one spot, or is soccer, what we call soccer, is that your number one love still?
Still, obviously, for soccer as much. I'll probably talk more NFL and NBA for whatever reason. The American fan base just jumped on my channel so much. I'll always talk, obviously, Premier League. I'm lucky enough to do a show with an ex international, so that's such a big opportunity for me. But obviously, we still talk it, but just through the channel, I probably talk more NFL, NBA, just because what we're doing, and that has definitely the last 5 years come more into my sport fandom. I've just radiated to it a little bit more.
Favorite soccer players, athlete as a kid?
Or growing up, I was a big. This will mean nothing to you, Paolo fan. He was around that time. A big thing was there was starting to be more European people coming to outside of UK players. He was an Italian striker, and it was just a little bit different. Obviously, the Italian players play a little bit different to English players. There was just a little bit something different to their game. So yeah, that sort of attracted me to the way he played.
What was your favorite soccer team? Like, what's the team that's like, hey, that's the team I've been rooting for my whole life. Like, I mean, I tell you all the time, my whole life I grew up as a Cub fan, like through and through. What soccer team was that for you?
It's West Ham, which I'm not sure how many of your American audience would. Best way I can describe them is they are essentially the New York Jets of the States.
So they're bad, is what you're saying.
Yeah, basically, last couple of years better than most years, to be honest with you. For the most part, they've been in or around the bottom, but the last few years they've been more mid halves, around 5 or 6, which is, if you're a West Ham fan, it's good. It's essentially like the Jets making the playoffs over the last couple of years, is the best way I can describe it.
So then, I mean, you went from one bad football team to another. So why bring yourself to bad heartache in 2 different seasons? People ask me all the time, how am I a Cub fan and a Packer fan, even a Bulls fan, and I'm not a Bears fan? I said I need at least one winning season. That's why I'm a Packers fan, to help me get through at least one winning season. But man, you did yourself no favors there, picking the Jets of soccer, and then you got the Jets of the NFL. So why the Jets? And is it just because like they're the East Coast, or how did that happen?
Essentially, my brother's a little bit to blame for that. He was a big Darrell Reeves fan. He had his jersey, and through watching the Jets every week, I was more of a fan of the league. But you just get sympathies for a team you're watching every week. You know that being a Cubs fan, so that's sort of the thing where I become a fan over time, got to know the players, and it sort of went like that. So it was kind of an accident, you could say.
So when did you? At what point in your life did you kind of jump on that like discover the NFL and become like, hey, this is like a really great sport. This is a sport I want to follow and eventually start talking about.
I want to say it's probably only really the last 6 or 7 years, so it's fairly new. I like to think I'm a quick study. So, yeah, although it's new, I think I could talk it with anyone, certainly the last decade. Obviously, some of the historic knowledge might not be as deep. Obviously, Hall of Famers and so forth, but just because it's only recently started being shown deeply in this country the last decade or even less than that to any great length, then obviously if you don't have access to a sport, then you're not necessarily going to be a fan of it.
Yeah, I would say that's probably true. I mean, obviously here, the States, it's the biggest sport, but like soccer is not, because it's just not broadcasted enough. And we're just not good at it either when it comes to even like World Cup and things like that. So I would say, Dan, that you're a success story from what the NFL wanted to do, right? Like that's why they went to London, and that's why they've put all these games in Europe to get fans. Unfortunately for you, you just chose a bad team, but I mean, you're going to live and die with it now, I guess, right?
Yeah, that is it. One thing about me is I can't pick a team that's already top. You want to build something. That's how I feel about who wants to join the top team. You want the team, someone that's building, because it's the hope what keeps you alive, and the hope is better than someone, for instance, what's won the Super Bowl. You jump on that bandwagon. Oh, it's another Super Bowl sort of thing.
I 100% agree. When the Cubs were good in 2016, I've met more Cub fans and more people jumping on that bandwagon than I've ever had in my entire life. And I was almost like, I hated like almost telling people I was a Cub fan at that point in time. Like I had to like disclaimer, like I've been a Cub fan way before now, and I'll be a Cub fan when everybody leaves us, and that has continued to happen. I actually tell people a lot of time like the 2015 team was my favorite team because like that team kind of came out of nowhere, where the 2016 team had expectations. So I 100% am right there with you on as far as, hey, pick the team that you live and die with, and that maybe not everybody is on the same bandwagon as you are. Dan, who's your favorite person? You've done some even like minor guys, like minor league, baseball players, ex-professional players. Who's the one guy that you thoroughly enjoyed interviewing?
Oh, that's a tough one. I will tell you this. One recent one what I really did enjoy was Ron Ripken, the son of obviously Hall of Famer Cal Ripken. I think he's going to join the network, but it come out of the blue. His dad's agent approached me, saw our social media, wanted to talk with us, and it's funny, he was nervous about coming on, and he just come across as much like yourself, just a guy that wants to talk sports. He didn't have any ego, and that's someone I want on my network. To be honest with you, I don't care if someone's an ex-professional or just a fan channel or something like that. As long as they just want to talk sports and there's no real ego to them, then that's what we want on here, or that's what how I try to approach it.
Did you ever think like when you first started out, like this is what I mean? You're on Roku now, Amazon TV. I mean, you're getting sponsors. When you first started out, did you ever think like, hey, like was this the goal when you started out, or like did you ever think you were going to get this big? Because like I mean, I'm just starting out, and you've seen me grow here, and every time I'm like, man, I didn't think this was going to happen, so I can't even imagine where you're at. And is that something that was this the goal, or what is the end goal, or just you just keep doing day by day?
Pretty much day by day. I'll be honest, when I first started, I didn't know how long it'd last. You don't know if someone will tune in. How I approached it is you keep making the videos, have confidence in your content. loads of people out there. You just need to hit on one or two. But I didn't know if how long the channel would last. If I would get disheartened should no one tune in. I didn't think of having people on, and I certainly didn't think a network or anything like that. But I think you have to take it day by day, but then change your vision as you go along as well.
And then, I mean, you're very fantasy football heavy. And is that just like because were you already into it, or is that because you linked up with Ryan from Fantasy Football for the People, and then like you guys kind of continued this, fantasy run here? I mean, we know that that's important. That's kind of like your baby, something that you've put a lot of time and effort into. So talk to me a little bit about the fantasy football aspect and how that kind of came about.
So up until last season, I'd never played fantasy football. It's not as big over here. It's starting to, but just as a tool to create community engagement, I thought, well, we better have something fantasy football, even for no other reason than to get comments in the group page. So I had no idea what I was looking for. So I messaged a few pages. Some responded, some didn't, and some bigger names responded with a big following. Come on. But what I was looking for is someone much like yourself who you can just talk to. Me and Ryan got on, and a couple of the bigger people with bigger followers did want to be involved, but they act like they're doing you a favour, if that makes sense. So there was an ease with me and Ryan talking, so we both just sort of said, let's do this show together. We'll grow each other's page together, and it kind of works. It feels longer that we've been working together. We don't just talk about fantasy football, a lot of things with the network. We sort of work on together, and he's a sounding board. So, yeah, it seems like longer that he's involved, and I know it's worked for him. He said it gave his articles an outlet to not just promote, but he can say, I know we've got this podcast, come on here and get my ideas across. I think that helps him when he's talking to maybe paid gigs. That's the biggest benefit I see from the show, not necessarily what it does for my channel, which it has helped because obviously fantasy football attracts people. It's that he's got these opportunities, and rightly so, because he's been doing it for a while, and I like that he's got Rotable he's working with. They've asked him to expand his content for them, and I think that's what we should aim for. Let's talk sports, not just that we're growing, but also that people on there is growing as well.
Dan, I mean, people are continuing to grow. This thing is, I think, blown up more than, even the last few weeks. I feel like there's new people I see on this network every day. What makes you reach out to people, or is it now to the point where like people are reaching out to you, asking you to be on, or what's the kind of goal here, going forward?
The biggest goal is just to have I always say that the best sports community out there, and as long as I don't care what fan base you're from, as long as you're not like toxic, you can have discussions like you and Anna with one another. That's fine. I don't mean that as in when I say get on, I mean like turning it personal should you have a difference of opinions. Discussion is what we're about, but it's turning it the other side, and that's what I really aim for. And my aim is to have every sports covered, so everyone can have a voice, a varied voice. Some of my co-hosts, like Jude, as you know, is on the younger side. One of my other co-hosts, Dan, is in his 70s, and there's just variety there. For instance, Dan attended a game with Jackie Robinson, and to have that wealth of knowledge is of value, but also having Jude's younger opinion is also of value, and that's what I aim for. And yeah, I consider it. Now you've got people contacting you what maybe want to partner up, and other podcasts will want you to come on and guest on. I think that's what you really want because it's getting your voice out there, which every place you talk sports on is an opportunity to get more people to know what you're doing.
100%. And we got another comment here real quick. Rich Sports chiming in. He's saying, "Hi guys, hey Rich. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. Sounds good." He says, "Sounds good." Exactly, Dan. I mean, you're adding everybody. I tell people. I mean, if there's a sport out there, you will find somebody. Whether it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, every sport there's fans and there's people that want to talk about it. And I mean, to your credit, my friend, you have found every sport, every fan base to talk about something. I mean, and it seems like, I mean, you're putting out 4 or 5 different shows a week and you got other people doing it on there. Is there ever a time, especially with your elements, where you're just like, man, I can't do it. I'm just going to have to push through it? Or, how does that affect you?
Pretty much push through it. Look, if I didn't do it when I was tired, I wouldn't do it. So you've almost got to do that. There is times you maybe need to stop, which is the benefit of having a team, because you can have them fill in or have one of their shows drop in. So yeah, you do with poor health, you're always fighting against something. But look, for someone like me, because of my disabilities, I'm lucky if I can walk across the room at times. So doing a show gives you purpose, and people, I think I'm not afraid to admit people like my story. They respond to that and they want to be involved with it in some way. And I've had a few, like, we're lucky enough to have 1 or 2 sponsors, and they actually consider my story a selling point, if you will. So some ways it's a curse, but in some ways it's a unique story. What hooks people in, and I'm of the belief, whatever gets you in the door, whether it's having a good voice come, it's how you treat them going forward, what keeps them around.
Exactly, Dan. I mean, I always tell people it's the old adage. We're taught it in kindergarten: treat people how you want to be treated, and you do that, and it takes you a long way. That's just what it comes down to. All right, Dan. Let's go ahead and start getting into it. I mean, we mentioned your Jets here. At the earlier in the show. How are you feeling about the Jets? I know you and Jude, and you got a couple other guys on this network that always constantly talking Jets, and you're one of the more realistic fans, probably just like people tell you I'm about the Packers as well. But how are we feeling, going into the season here?
I'm highly positive, but at the same time realistic. I've always said I'd take 6 wins. I think that's a realistic aim. But more than anything, I want 2 divisional wins. You're 4 years into Joe Douglas. He can't be losing every divisional game. And CJ Mosley can speak at the podium as much as he likes about Fletcher Cox laughing at him during the game. Well, he's going to laugh at you if you can't win any divisional games for 3 straight years. So how I feel is I'd even take 4 wins if it meant we could win 2 divisional games, because that's how important. I think it sets the benchmark to the other teams in your division. So I think Joe Douglas is the guy, and I think he's doing a great job. He had to tear it down to build it up, but at the same time, you've got to start winning games. So whereas I like everything he's done this off-season, I can't think of one wrong move he's made this year. To be honest with you, now it's coming up to crunch time because he can't. Well, excuses are starting to run out. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I'm with you. I like a lot of their skill position players, and I like the picks they've made. I'm on record, and I've told you this before. The one guy I don't like is, and that's the most important position in all of sports, and that's the quarterback. I'm not a fan of Zach Wilson. I wasn't a guy that was like, hey, they should have drafted him. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Jude on our Monday show, Buffoon and Bodkins. Let's say Flacco starts the season, and let's just say, for 4 weeks, it's a quarter of the season. The Jets are 3-1. And Zach Wilson's healthy. Do you ride out the Flacco train at 3-1, or do you say, hey, we're still going with Zach? Let's put Zach in and see what happens, even though you got some momentum at 3-1 with Joe Flacco.
Now, this is going to be unpopular, but if they're 3-1 and completely in the divisional race, then you can't be 3-1 no matter who your quarterback is and dump the quarterback, because the locker room will go. It will completely go. That's just how I feel. It's the same as if you're losing games on purpose. You may get the number one pick, but what damage will that do? It's the same in this now. If you're 3-1, but so are a few of the teams in the division, then you can maybe get me on that argument if you're not in the hunt, if you will. So I think if you're 3-1, you've got to ride with Flacco, as that fan base will be rabid. Probably 90% would disagree with that, even if it got you in the playoffs, to be honest with you.
I'm in agreement that if they're 3-1, that you still stick. You got to stick with Joe Flacco, especially if he's playing decent. Jude was on the other end saying that it's their job to stick with Zach Wilson, but I think that's just young Jude being naive and hoping that Zach Wilson's the guy, and not enough knowledge as far as what the real world is, and what that New York media is like. Because you nailed it, they're 3-1 and they flip to Zach Wilson, and he craps the bed. That's it for Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. Now, you sticking with Joe Flacco don't mean you're saying forget about Zach Wilson. What it does mean is you're saying to Flacco, you've got to keep winning, or we've got Zach in there. Look, you want competition in every position, and the quarterback is no different. Because what does it say to the locker room if you've gone on that streak and you just dump him? It just doesn't work. It was the same thing when it's a different situation, but when Mike White won one game and they had to keep him in, you ride with the hot hand no matter what. Now, it would be almost a miracle if they are 3-1, given the start, the strength of opposition you're playing against. But if he can come out with 3 wins out of the first 4 games, then he would deserve that start, to be honest with you.
So, and the reason I was bringing this up, and if I'm not wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, Flacco was outplaying Wilson in practice, is what I was hearing. Is that true? And, what are they going to do if that continues to be the case?
The reports are that I've heard he was outplaying him, and I will say this: both in his first stint during Adam Gase last year, and also when he had to fill in, this offense responds to Joe Flacco. Now, from what I understand, they didn't in Philly. I don't think it went well, even though he wasn't the starter. But just for whatever reason, this offense responds to him. I would even say there's an argument to say they respond to him more than Zach Wilson. Now, that could be a storyline going forward, but then Zach's going to have to learn. He gave Joe Flacco an opportunity because he didn't slide down in that preseason game, And if you give your understudy an opportunity, sometimes you live to regret it in the NFL.
Exactly. Ask Don Majkowski. He was the guy who was the starter for Brett Favre, and then he got hurt, and Brett Favre came in, and, well, the rest is history. So I definitely agree with that, and I think that Flacco gives him a better shot. I mean, until Zach Wilson proves me wrong, and for your sake, I hope he does. I'm not buying any stock in Zach Wilson. If let's just say the Jets. Let's just say they get 4 wins this year, 3 wins. Wilson doesn't play that well. Is it the seat hotter on Wilson, or will that be on Bob Saleh as a guy that everybody was high on when they brought him in? And, how hot will the seat be there if let's just, if they're a 3 to 4 win team, and let's, pick in top 3 again?
Well, it's interesting. I think it depends on the rest of the offense. I said Joe Douglas might get a shot at another quarterback if Zach Wilson fails, but that's only if almost every other pick goes right. Garrett Wilson looks good. Elijah Moore, Breece Hall looks good. Some of these defensive players has developed. Then I think he gets another shot, but he cannot go, say, only 60% of these draft picks work out if Zach Wilson does as well. So it depends on the context, but I think Robert Saleh as coach, he's on as much of a hot seat as Zach Wilson this year. I like his attitude, and I know everyone likes his, what I like to call rah-rah attitude, but there's a few things what needed ironing out last year. Some of his clock management, which is easily fixed, but his messages in the media, for instance, I spoke about this quite a bit. When Mekhi Becton went down injured, he got up on the podium and said he expected him back maybe week 8. And to anyone, that sounded a bit of a stretch. Now, everyone come to expect him, and then when it came to off-season programming, he still wasn't ready to go. The New York media was bang on it on Mekhi, and I believe some of that was because of that message Robert Saleh put out then. It may sound unfair, but he's got to know what market he's in, and he can't keep committing that mistake in regard to his messages, because that's as much of a job as what he does in the building.
Dan, 2 more quick questions and we'll get you out of here, my friend. Number 1, give me your favorite Jet player, or favorite Jet player and favorite NFL player of all time.
Well, given my short tutorage, I would say it's an equal to 1. Quinnen Williams, I think he's the emphasis of a young NFL player, makes it fun to watch. I will admit, playing-wise, he's shown some potential, but also has to show a bit of consistency. And then another player, what I do like, he's just recently left in free agency, is Foley Tassi. Now, that might be a weird pick to some, but I like the guys in the trenches. I know everybody likes the receiver or running back, but the reason why I like Foley is he was a 6th round pick, but he played as hard as anyone, admittedly, on bad teams. But for me, on any sports team, as long as you play hard, you've got my support, because that's all you can ask for, no matter the talent.
And then my final question: give me a Super Bowl prediction here going into this season. Who you got? You can give me a winner and who's playing.
Ooh,
Put you in the hot seat here.
I was going to say, I do fancy the Bills getting there. I'm not saying they'll win it. I just think there's something about them. So I think they might get there.
So you got the Bills, and then who else in the NFC?
I would at this point go for the Rams, just because they haven't shown me anything to say they're not going to be there.
Lock it in. Dan Harris is in on the Bills and Rams, folks. Dan, I can't thank you enough for this, my friend. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on, sharing your story. You are a true inspiration. Again, I tell you this all the time. There wouldn't be this Bodkin show type if it wasn't for you. I don't know how we came across on Twitter or whatever it was, but I just remember this message saying, "Hey, does anybody want to be on this podcast or a show?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll do it." I had just started talking on my phone a couple weeks prior to that, and one thing has led into another thing, and has formed this friendship, partnership, and I hope to be continuing to do this for a long time with you, my friend, and going on this journey that you're on, and watching this network continue to grow. I can't thank you enough, my friend.
No problem at all. It's my honor to come on, and people probably don't understand. We generally do talk every day, so that's why the show works as well. Like there's other podcasts will probably go out there, probably have more bells and whistles than us, but they probably don't talk from one episode to another. And I think the reason why it works is because we're a little bit different.
I've been told I'm different my whole life, Dan.
Nothing wrong with it.
We do got one quick comment here before we get out of here. Rich Sports asks, I do have my own channel. If you, Rich Sports, this is part of Let's Talk Sports, but I have my own channel. It's streaming live right now as well on Let's Talk Sports. If you look at the fine, small reading there that my buddy Kenny put up, that'll tell you where to go. But I'm on YouTube, The Bodkin Show. Just look that up on YouTube, and we are there. Got our own channel. Give me a nice subscribe, and I'll subscribe back to you, Rich. Appreciate everybody. Again, if you missed out on it, actually, Dan, go ahead before I plug your own stuff. What do you got coming up on this week on Let's Talk Sports? I know you got probably 80,000 podcasts with 80,000 different people. What do you got going on coming up this week?
We've got the final episode of the Fantasy Football University, which is the biggest thing we've got going on at the moment, and I'm speaking to a Giants MLB reporter with hopefully he'll come on and join the team. He works the beat for them, so that's something people can keep an eye on.
All right, folks, this has been another great episode of the Bodkin Show. Again, make sure you're subscribing to Let's Talk Sports and the Bodkin Show. Be a friend, tell a friend, share with a friend. I'll be back on tomorrow with Buffoon and Bodkins, and make sure you check it out, Tanner and the Boys on Sports Buffoons. Also, again, like I mentioned at the top of the show, Head Kicks and Haymakers. We did our UFC pre-show and post-show this past weekend, the post-show. I mean, if you missed it, Dan, you guys got a UFC welterweight champion right out of London. Leon Rocky Edwards shocked the world last night. And won the welterweight champ. I know you're not a big UFC fan, but that's somebody that you need to get behind because that's one of your guys. Get behind Leon. Leon, we talk about that and more on Head Kicks and Head Kicks and Haymakers this morning. We'll be back on that show again on Sunday. I'll be back tomorrow on Buffoon and Bodkins, plus our Wednesday weekly wrap-up show. Please do check that out as well. Dan, I can't thank you enough for doing this, my friend. It's been a pleasure. I'm going to hit the outro. It's been a great night. Hope you have a good evening, Dan. Thanks again for coming on, my friend.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Nick.